A very good evening to you, and a most sincere thank you for choosing to spend a quiet piece of your time with us here at our little corner of storytelling. It is, you see, a rather wonderful thing to find kindred spirits who appreciate a gentle pause, especially when the wider world hums with so much else. We are truly glad you have found your way to our channel. Now, this particular story we have for you, the Slow Almanacs of Stone, has been crafted with a very special hope in mind, to be a soft and peaceful companion, helping to guide you gently towards the land of sweet dreams. It is filled with whispers of ancient stones, the soft glow of curious, friendly lichens, and a stillness that we hope will quieten your thoughts most agreeably. And so, just before you let your eyelids grow heavy and put your listening device to one side, if this sort of quiet magic finds favor with you, perhaps you might offer a little tap to show your appreciation and even join our circle by subscribing, so we might share more peaceful tales. Then, do settle in and let the Vale of Patient Stones embrace you. Chapter 1. The Threshold of Timelessness. It was not so much a decision as a gentle, unspoken yielding that brought the pilgrim to the hidden entrance of the Vale of Patient Stones. The world left behind had not been unkind, merely a little too full of comings and goings, like a stream bustling with too many fallen leaves, each demanding a moment's notice. Now, standing before an almost imperceptible parting in a tall stand of slender, silver-barked trees, whose leaves rustled with a sound like the softest taffeta, the pilgrim felt a quiet invitation, a sense of homecoming to a place never before seen, yet deeply known to some quiet inner compass. The air that breathed out from the opening was cool, carrying the clean, earthy scent of ancient, undisturbed soil and the faintest, almost ghostly sweetness, as if far-off blossoms from a forgotten spring had left their perfume lingering in the still atmosphere. With a soft exhalation like releasing a breath held unknowingly for a long, long time, the pilgrim stepped through. The transition was subtle, yet profound. It was as if a heavy, invisible cloak, woven from the murmurings and minor urgencies of the everyday, had simply slipped from their shoulders, pooling unnoticed at their feet. The light within the veil was different, too. No harsh glare of an open sky, but a soft, diffused radiance that filtered down through the canopy of those silver-barked trees and the broader, deeper green leaves of ancient, wise-looking companions, painting the undulating ground in gentle strokes of muted sage, dove gray, and the tenderest lavender. The world here seemed to hold its breath, not in suspense, but in a state of perfect, settled peace. The ground itself was a comfort, a yielding carpet of countless seasons of fallen leaves, now softened and blended into a rich, springy loam that hushed each footstep, transforming what might have been a tread into a mere whisper against the earth. Here and there, great smooth stones, like ancient beasts, slumbering in the gentle light, emerged from the ground, their surfaces cool and dappled with patches of deep green growth, so soft it looked like plush cushioning. The pilgrim reached out a hand to touch one such stone, feeling the cool, steadfast solidity of it, a sense of immense, unhurried age that was not daunting but deeply reassuring, as if it had seen all of time pass by and found it all, in the end, quite peaceful. Sounds, when they came, were like precious, isolated jewels set within the great soft fabric of silence. There was the distant melodic sigh of a gentle current of air, not quite a breeze, more a slow exhalation of the valley itself as it moved through the smoothly sculpted rock formations that rose in gentle curves in the distance, their shapes reminiscent of waves stilled in a calm sea. And then the softest, most delicate crunch of those fallen leaves, like crushed ancient parchment, as the pilgrim moved slowly forward, each step an act of gentle exploration into this profound quietude. There was no hurry, no destination in mind, only the quiet unfolding of the path ahead. A little further in, where the trees thinned slightly to reveal a small natural clearing, a sheltered alcove presented itself, nestled between two particularly large, embracing stones. It was as if the vale itself had prepared this small haven. The interior was surprisingly dry, lined with a thick layer of a pale, fibrous plant material, like sun-bleached straw but infinitely softer, that had gathered there over uncounted quiet years, forming a natural, welcoming bed. The air within the alcove was still and held a comforting, earthy warmth, a stark contrast to the coolness of the stone, but perfectly harmonious with it. The pilgrim sank down into this unexpected nest, feeling the soft fibers yield and conform, a sensation of being gently held, supported by the ancient land itself. A profound sense of safety, absolute and unconditional, washed over them, and with it came the awareness of a subtle inner tension, previously unnoticed, now gently unclenching, like a fist slowly opening palm upwards to receive a gift. The scent here was of dry leaves, sun-warmed stone, and the faintest, cleanest perfume of the fibrous bedding, a lullaby in aroma. Outside the alcove, the light began to soften further, the lavender hues deepening into a soft, dusky violet, though the concept of day and night seemed to lose its sharp edges here, replaced by gentle gradations of luminous quiet and shadowy peace. The pilgrim watched the slow shift, feeling no need to measure time, only to be present within its gentle flow. The distant sigh of the wind through the rocks continued its ageless song, a murmur that spoke of eons of stillness. And so, in this first gentle embrace of the Vale of Patient Stones, the pilgrim rested, not merely the body, but the spirit too, letting the profound silence seep in like healing balm. The journey had been quiet, the arrival even quieter, and now there was only the soft breath of this ancient place, and the equally soft breath of the one who had come to listen to its slow, stone-written almanacs of peace. It was quite simply enough. Chapter 2. The Language of Luminous Lichen. As the soft undulations of light and shadow marked the passage of what might elsewhere be called days, the pilgrim's awareness began to attune itself to the more subtle cadences of the vale. It was a process akin to eyes adjusting to a dimly lit room, where shapes at first unseen gradually emerge with gentle clarity. The initial overwhelming sense of peace began to differentiate into 1,000 quiet details, each a delicate note in the Vale's silent symphony. The pilgrim found a gentle rhythm, rising with the first soft diffusion of light through the silvery leaves and settling back into the comforting alcove as the shadows lengthened and the air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant unseen ferns. It was during one of these slow transitions from soft light to deep, velvety shadow that the pilgrim first truly noticed the luminous lichens, patches of what had appeared by day as mere gray-green, slightly fuzzy textures on the ancient standing stones, and the bark of some of the older trees began, as the ambient light faded, to awaken with an inner radiance. It was not a harsh or sudden illumination, but a slow, gentle gathering of light, as if tiny stars were being kindled one by one within the lichen's fabric, eventually coalescing into a soft, warm, golden ivory luminescence. This light was alive. It pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm like a sleeping heart, or the gentle ebb and flow of a tide on a tranquil shore. The pilgrim would sit for unmeasured spans, simply observing these glowing tapestries. They adorned the stones in intricate swirling patterns, each patch unique, casting a delicate mobile tracery of light and shadow on the surrounding surfaces, the smooth bark of a nearby sapling, a patch of dark, rich soil, the very air itself, which seemed to thicken and soften around their glow. The light was just bright enough to illuminate the immediate surroundings with a comforting, gentle presence, making the deeper shadows of the Vale feel not empty, but simply resting. There was a quiet companionship in their silent, steady glow, a sense of ancient, benign life going about its peaceful, nightly business. One evening, drawn by a particularly intricate pattern of light on a broad, flat stone near the stream, whose gentle murmurs were a constant lullaby, the pilgrim reached out a tentative hand. The surface of the luminous lichen, when touched, was surprisingly soft, almost like fine, dry velvet, or the down of a young bird. And it was warm, not with a burning heat, but with a gentle, pervasive warmth that seemed to radiate from deep within, a comforting sensation that seeped into the pilgrim's fingertips and traveled like a soothing current up the arm. The lichen gave off the faintest, sweet, earthy scent, like warm honey mingled with the fragrance of dry, sun-baked leaves, a perfume that spoke of ancient things and deep contentment. It was while the pilgrim was thus engaged, lost in the quiet wonder of this living light, that another presence made itself known. There was no sound of approach, no sudden appearance, but rather a gentle awareness, as if a part of the Vale itself had coalesced into a quiet form. Turning slowly, the pilgrim saw a figure standing a little way off, robed in garments woven from what looked like dried reeds and soft grasses, the colors of sedge and willow bark. The figure's face, barely discernible in the lichen's glow, was serene, and a warm, shy smile touched its lips. This, the pilgrim intuited, was a guardian of this quiet place. Without a word, the guardian approached, moving with a grace that seemed to make no disturbance in the air or on the soft earth. In their hands, they held a simple, unadorned ceramic cup from which a faint steam rose, carrying a comforting aroma. With a gentle inclination of the head, the guardian offered the cup to the pilgrim. It was a silent gesture of welcome, of shared peace, as natural and unforced as the glowing of the lichens or the murmur of the stream. The pilgrim accepted the cup, hands cupping its smooth, warm surface, the heat a pleasant echo of the lichen's own gentle fire. The infusion within was the color of pale sunshine and tasted of sweet earth, a hint of wild mint, and something else, something indefinable that reminded the pilgrim of starlight and deep, quiet wells. It was a taste that seemed to clear the mind and settle the spirit, each sip a deepening of the tranquility that permeated the vale. The guardian waited patiently, their presence a calm reassurance, not demanding interaction, simply offering companionship in the shared moment of observing the luminous lichens and the quiet unfolding of the vale's gentle magic. As the pilgrim finished the drink, returning the cup with a soft nod of thanks, the guardian smiled again, a fleeting but deeply kind expression. Then, as silently as they had appeared, the figure seemed to recede, blending back into the soft shadows and the gentle pulse of the lichen light, leaving the pilgrim once more in quiet contemplation, but now with a sense of connection, a feeling of having been gently acknowledged and welcomed into the heart of this luminous, peaceful world. The soft glow of the lichens seemed a little warmer, their rhythm a little more companionable, now a shared secret in the vast, quiet cradle of the vale. Chapter 3. The Whispering Stone Circles. In the soft light of what seemed to be a new day, though such distinctions felt wonderfully blurred in the vale, the pilgrim found the guardian waiting quietly by the stream, their reed-woven cloak the color of the river stones themselves. There was no spoken invitation, merely a gentle gesture, a slight turn of the head towards a path that led deeper into the valley, a path the pilgrim had not yet explored. It was an invitation understood in the silent language of the vale, an offering of further discovery into its peaceful mysteries, and the pilgrim accepted with a quiet inclination of their own head, a sense of gentle anticipation stirring within, as soft as the unfurling of a new fern. They walked together, the guardian moving with that characteristic silent grace, their feet seeming to barely brush the yielding carpet of fallen leaves. The path wound gently upwards, through stands of trees whose bark was as smooth and cool as polished jade, their leaves creating a dappled canopy that scattered the light into 1,000 shifting coins of soft gold upon the ground. The air here was even stiller, carrying the scent of warm rock and a faintest, almost imperceptible trace of something clean and energetic, like the air after a summer shower that has washed the world anew, though no rain had fallen here for as long as the pilgrim could recall. Soon, the trees began to thin, and the path opened into a wide, almost circular expanse, a natural amphitheater formed by the gentle slopes of the surrounding hills. And here, in this quiet heart of the vale, stood the great monoliths. They were immense, far larger than any stones the pilgrim had yet encountered, their surfaces weathered by uncounted millennia of wind and soft, patient rains into smooth, flowing shapes, some like colossal sleeping beasts, others like vast, unwritten tablets awaiting a message from the stars. They stood not in random disarray, but in serene concentric circles, as if placed by a hand that understood the deepest harmonies of the earth. As the pilgrim stepped into the first circle of stones, a new sensation became apparent. It was a sound, yet not a sound, a low, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very stones themselves, or perhaps from the earth beneath them. It was too low to be truly heard by the ears, but it was felt, it was most certainly felt, as a gentle, pervasive vibration that traveled up through the soles of the feet, through the bones of the legs, and into the very core of the pilgrim's being. It was like the deep, contented purr of some unimaginably vast and ancient creature, dreaming its peaceful dreams beneath the surface of the world. These, the pilgrim understood, were the whispering stones. The guardian gestured towards one of the largest monoliths, its surface warmed by the filtered sunlight to a pleasant, inviting temperature. The pilgrim leaned back against its smooth, supportive expanse, feeling the ancient stone conform to their shape, a cradle of immense strength and gentleness. The hum was stronger here, a tangible presence that seemed to flow through the stone and into the pilgrim's body, soothing every nerve, calming every unvoiced disquiet. It was as if the mind itself was being gently massaged, its usual busy thoughts smoothed away, replaced by a profound, empty stillness that was not vacant but full of peace. Long moments, or perhaps hours, passed in this way. The pilgrim sat nestled against the sun-warmed stone, feeling the gentle thrum of its ancient song, observing the slow dance of light and shadow as the sun, or the Vale's equivalent soft luminary, traced its unhurried arc across the sky. The air around the whispering stones seemed to shimmer faintly, and the scent of warm rock mingled with that clean, ozone-like freshness, a perfume of pure elemental energy, benign and deeply restorative. It was a place of profound, almost sacred quiet, where the silence was not an absence of sound, but the presence of something far older and more fundamental. The guardian, too, had found a place against another stone, sitting in quiet contemplation, their eyes closed, a faint smile playing on their lips, the very picture of serene attunement. There was no need for words between them. The stones spoke their own language, a language of deep time, of patient endurance, of unwavering calm. And in their collective hum, they seemed to offer a sense of belonging, a feeling of being an intrinsic part of this ancient, peaceful landscape, as rooted and as welcome as the stones themselves. As the light began to soften, heralding another gentle transition towards the Vale's version of twilight, the luminous lichens that also adorn these great monoliths began to stir, their soft golden ivory glow gradually awakening to join the subtle hum of the stones. The combination was deeply hypnotic, a symphony of gentle light and soothing vibration that enveloped the pilgrim in a cocoon of unparalleled tranquility. Here, in the heart of the whispering stone circles, the pilgrim felt a profound sense of acceptance, as if the ancient heart of the Vale itself had opened and welcomed them into its deepest, most peaceful chamber. Thoughts of the world beyond, of time, of seeking, all dissolved into the warm, resonant hum and the soft, pulsing light. There was only now, and now was utterly, perfectly peaceful. Chapter 4. The Pool of Reflected Calm. Not far from the ancient humming circles of the whispering stones, nestled in a shallow hollow where the ground dipped like a gently cupped hand, lay a pool of water. It was not a large pool, perhaps no wider than a generous hearth, but its stillness was absolute, its surface a perfect, unbroken mirror of polished obsidian, reflecting the soft, diffused light of the Vale's sky. The guardian, with a soft inclination of the head, indicated this tranquil spot, and the pilgrim approached with the same quiet reverence that the great stones instilled, feeling that this, too, was a place of special serenity within the already deeply peaceful Vale. The edges of the pool were fringed with a type of fine, almost feathery plant, its fronds a delicate silver green that trailed into the water, their tips barely breaking the surface tension. There were no ripples, no disturbances. The water lay as if it had been holding its breath for centuries, patiently reflecting the slow drift of unseen clouds high above, or the gentle sway of the silver-barked trees that stood a little way off, their forms softened and made dreamlike in the watery depths. The air here was cool and carried the clean, subtle scent of water-smoothed pebbles and rich, damp, fertile earth, a grounding perfume that spoke of life quietly thriving. The pilgrim settled by the pool's edge on a cushion of the same soft, dry plant matter that had lined the welcoming alcove, and simply gazed into its dark, reflective heart. At first it was merely a mirror of the surroundings, but as the minutes, or perhaps gentle eons, drifted by, the reflection seemed to take on a quality of its own. It was as if the pool was not just reflecting the world above, but a deeper, more serene version of it, a world where every line was softer, every color imbued with a gentle inner light, every movement imbued with an unhurried grace. Thoughts, when they arose in the pilgrim's mind, were like those soft, high clouds mirrored in the pool's surface. They would drift gently into view, be observed without any need for attachment or analysis, and then, just as gently, drift away again, dissolving back into the quiet expanse of the mind, much like the reflections seemed to merge with the pool's dark, tranquil depths. There was no effort in this, no struggle to quiet the mind. The pool itself seemed to draw out the stillness, to invite the thoughts to simply pass by, acknowledged but unheeded, like distant birdsong heard through a peaceful doze. A profound sense of lightness began to permeate the pilgrim's being, as if a heavy, invisible cloak, perhaps woven of old worries or unexamined burdens, had been carefully, kindly lifted and laid aside. Breathing, which had already found a quiet rhythm in the Vale, became even slower, deeper, more effortless, each inhalation drawing in the cool, clean air from the pool's surface, each exhalation a soft, complete release, carrying away any lingering vestiges of tension. It was as if the pilgrim was breathing with the pool itself, sharing its ancient, imperturbable calm. Reaching out a hand, the pilgrim allowed their fingertips to touch the water. It was surprisingly cool, yet not cold, a silken coolness that felt incredibly refreshing. As their fingers broke the surface, The perfect reflection shattered into 1,000 dancing fragments of light and shadow, only to reform instantly as their hands stilled. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer, like powdered stardust, clung to their skin for a few moments after withdrawing their hand, and a pleasant tingling sensation accompanied it, along with a feeling of renewed mental clarity, as if a fine mist had been gently wiped from an inner window. The guardian, who had been sitting quietly a little distance away, observing the gentle dance of light on the water, offered a soft smile, a shared understanding of the pool's quiet magic. There were no lessons to be learned here, no tasks to achieve, only the simple, profound experience of being present, of allowing the deep calm of the waters of quiet reflection to seep into every fiber of one's being. The luminous lichens on the surrounding stones, catching the last of the day's gentle light, began their slow, rhythmic glow, their soft radiance now duplicated in the pool, creating a breathtaking spectacle of doubled peace, a world above and a world below, both steeped in the same profound, unwavering serenity. Here, by the still, dark water, under the watchful, gentle gaze of the ancient stones and the soft, pulsing light of the lichens, the pilgrim felt a sense of peaceful acceptance that was deeper than any experienced before. The quiet hum of the distant stone circles provided a gentle bass note to the silence, and the only movement was the slow, rhythmic pulse of the lichens and the equally slow, rhythmic breath of the pilgrim, now perfectly attuned to the ancient, unhurried heartbeat of the Vale. It was a state of being so complete, so utterly restful, that it felt like the very essence of coming home. Chapter 5, Carrying the Stillness Within. The passage of time in the Vale of Patient Stones was not marked by clocks or calendars, but by the slow unfurling of luminous lichen light, the subtle shift of shadows across ancient monoliths, and the deepening sense of peace within the pilgrim's own heart. There came a moment, not as a decision, but as a gentle internal knowing, much like the way a plant knows when to turn towards a new source of soft light, that the pilgrim felt a readiness to move onward. It was not a desire to leave the Vale, for a part of it now felt intrinsically woven into the fabric of their being, but rather a quiet sense of having received its deepest gift, a sense of being filled to the brim with its ancient, unwavering calm. On this particular morning, or perhaps it was an evening, for the light was always so gently ambiguous, the luminous lichens seemed to glow with a particularly soft, yet vibrant intensity, their rhythmic pulses like a silent, warm farewell. The whispering stones in their distant circles hummed a resonant chord that felt like a blessing, a deep, vibrational affirmation that lingered in the air like the scent of ancient incense. The pilgrim stood for a long while by the pool of reflected calm, its surface perfectly still, mirroring a sky of the softest dove gray, and saw not just a reflection, but a promise of the stillness they now carried within. The guardian appeared, as always, with their gentle, silent presence, their reed-woven cloak seeming to capture the muted colors of the Vale itself. In their outstretched hands, they held a small, perfectly smooth stone, no bigger than a bird's egg, its color a deep, warm gray, like the heart of the monoliths. It was warm to the touch, as if it had been held in a sunbeam for many hours, or perhaps held close to the guardian's own warm heart. The pilgrim accepted the stone, its weight comforting and familiar in their palm, a tangible reminder of the profound tranquility found in this secluded haven. No words were spoken, for none were needed. The shared understanding was as clear and deep as the Vale's quietest pools. With a final soft inclination of the head, a gesture of gratitude that encompassed every stone, every lichen, every gentle breath of air in the Vale, the pilgrim turned towards the almost imperceptible parting in the silver-barked trees that marked the threshold to the world beyond. Stepping through was as gentle as entering had been, a soft transition from one state of quietude to another, for the peace of the Vale was now an inner landscape, as real and as present as the ground beneath their feet. The world that gradually re-emerged, the world of before, seemed subtly changed, or perhaps it was the pilgrim's perception of it that had been irrevocably softened. The light seemed gentler, the colors less stark, the sounds of everyday existence less demanding, more like the distant murmur of a stream now heard with an inner ear attuned to deeper silences. The pace of things, which once might have felt hurried, now seemed merely active, and the pilgrim moved through it with a new, unhurried grace, carrying the stillness of the stones and the patient light of the lichens not as a fading memory, but as a quiet, steady, luminous presence deep within. The small, warm stone from the Vale remained in the pilgrim's pocket, a constant, gentle reminder. Sometimes, in a moment of stillness, they would hold it, feeling its smooth surface, its comforting weight, and be instantly transported back to the deep hum of the whispering stones, the soft pulse of the luminous lichens, the profound peace of the pool of reflected calm. But increasingly, the stone was simply a companion, for the Vale itself had become an inner sanctuary, a wellspring of peace to be touched upon in any moment, in any place. And so, the pilgrim walked onward, a quiet figure moving through the world, carrying within them the timeless wisdom of the Slow Almanacs of Stone. They had sought a quiet pause and had found an enduring peace, a gift from a valley where time itself moved with a slow and gentle grace, a valley that had taught them the profound beauty of simply being in perfect, unwavering calm. The pilgrim was no longer just a visitor to a peaceful place, but a quiet embodiment of its serenity, breathing its stillness out into the world with every soft, gentle exhalation.